There's a world 40 million miles away that has never spoken a word, never asked a question, never wondered about anything at all. And yet, for centuries, humans have looked at it and seen themselves. Mars glows red in the night sky. Not bright red, rust red, the color of old blood, dried and forgotten. Ancient people saw that color and felt something stir. The Babylonians named it after Nergal, their god of plague and war. The Greeks called it Ares. The Romans settled on Mars. Different languages, same instinct. That light in the darkness looked angry. It looked violent, so they gave it a name that matched what they felt when they saw it. But here's the thing about gods. They're never really about the thing itself. They're about what we need them to be. Mars wasn't violent. It was just there, reflecting sunlight, following its orbit, doing what planets do. The violence was ours. We looked up and projected our fears onto a dot of light we couldn't touch. For thousands of years, that was enough. Mars stayed distant, mythical, a story told to explain why some stars wander while others stay fixed. Then glass lenses got better. Telescopes appeared, and suddenly Mars stopped being a myth and became a place. Galileo pointed his telescope at Mars in 1610. He saw a disk instead of a point, something with shape, real edges. It didn't answer any questions. It just made new ones possible. What's on the surface? Does it have an atmosphere? Could something live there? Those questions hung in the air for another 200 years. Then, in 1877, an Italian astronomer named Giovanni Schiaparelli made a map. He looked through his telescope and saw lines, faint dark, stretching across the Martian surface in patterns that almost looked intentional. He called them canali, channels, natural formations, maybe cut by water or wind, the way rivers carve through rock on Earth. The word traveled, and when it reached America, it mutated. Percival Lowell was wealthy, brilliant in some ways, obsessive in others. He heard about Schiaparelli's channels and something clicked in his mind. Not channels, canals, built, engineered. He convinced himself that Mars was home to an ancient civilization fighting for survival, and he spent the rest of his life trying to prove it. He built an observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. Night after night, he stared at Mars through the telescope and drew what he saw. The lines became clearer in his sketches, more geometric. They crossed the planet like a vast irrigation network, connecting what he believed were cities to polar ice caps. He published books, gave lectures, told anyone who would listen that Mars was dying, that its oceans had evaporated, and that the Martians had built canals to move water from the poles to their failing civilizations. People wanted to believe him. The idea was too compelling to ignore. A neighboring world, close enough to see but too far to visit. An older, wiser species struggling against extinction. It felt like a warning, like looking into a mirror that showed the future. Other astronomers looked and saw nothing. Better telescopes revealed no canals. Photography proved the lines were optical illusions, tricks of light and atmosphere combined with the human brain's desperate need to see patterns. Lowell's Mars was fiction, but by then it didn't matter. The damage, or maybe the gift, was done. Mars had stopped being just a planet. It had become a screen onto which humanity could project its deepest anxieties and greatest hopes. The stories came fast after that. H.G. Wells wrote The War of the Worlds in 1898. His Martians weren't neighbors. They were invaders, technologically superior, ruthless, and dying. They came to Earth not for peace, but for conquest, for survival. The book terrified readers because it flipped the script. Humans weren't the explorers. They were the colonized. Mars wasn't a distant curiosity. It was a threat. Edgar Rice Burroughs gave us John Carter, a Civil War veteran who wakes up on Mars and finds red deserts, lost cities, and a princess to rescue. It was adventure, escapism, but underneath was the same yearning. Mars as the place you run to when Earth becomes unbearable. Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles showed us something quieter and sadder. His Mars was haunted. Humans arrived and found ruins, ghosts, the fading remnants of something beautiful that had already ended. His Martians didn't fight. They vanished. They watched as Earth people brought their wars and pollution and restlessness. Bradbury's Mars wasn't a frontier. It was a graveyard we insisted on moving into. All these stories, different as they were, shared one truth. They weren't really about Mars. They were about us, our loneliness, our guilt, our fear of running out of time. Mars became the mirror we held up when we couldn't bear to look at ourselves directly. Then the machines arrived. Mariner 4 flew past Mars in 1965. 22 grainy images came back, black and white, blurry. They showed craters, just craters. No canals, no cities, no forests. Mars looked like the moon, dead, empty, silent. The disappointment was crushing, though nobody said it out loud. Mars had been the one place where we allowed ourselves to imagine, and it turned out to be barren. But something strange happened. We didn't look away. We kept going. Viking 1 and Viking 2 landed on Mars in 1976. They tested the soil for signs of life. The results were ambiguous. Chemical reactions that might mean biology, or might mean nothing at all. Mars refused to give a clear answer. It offered just enough mystery to keep us hooked. The photographs from the surface showed red dirt, rocks, a pale pink sky during the day that turned blue at sunset, thin air, freezing cold, wind that barely moved anything, silence, no ruins, no fossils, no proof anything had ever lived there, just dust that had been sitting undisturbed for billions of years. And somehow, that made it worse, because emptiness isn't the opposite of life. It's the aftermath, the evidence that something ended. Scientists started piecing together what happened. Mars used to have water. Rivers carved valleys into the rock. Lakes formed in ancient craters. Minerals that only exist in liquid water sat preserved in the dirt. The planet was warm once, wet, the kind of place where life could have started if it started anywhere beyond Earth. But Mars lost its magnetic field. Without that shield, solar wind stripped away the atmosphere. Water evaporated or sank into the frozen ground. Rivers dried up. The air thinned. The warmth disappeared. Mars didn't die suddenly. It died slowly, over millions of years. Long enough that if anything had been alive there, it would have noticed the change. Watched the sky dim, felt the air grow colder, seen the water vanish. Then it would have ended, quietly, without witness. That's the Mars we found. Not a living world, not even a dead one. A tomb with no body inside. Evidence of what used to be, with no proof of what it was. The rovers came next. Sojourner in 1997, Spirit and Opportunity in 2004, Curiosity in 2012, Perseverance in 2021. Each one more sophisticated. Each one rolling across the surface alone, sending back pictures of rocks and cliffs and dunes, searching for traces of ancient microbes, drilling into stone, analyzing dust. The missions were scientific, methodical, but something about the photographs felt personal. Tire tracks in red dirt, a robot's shadow stretching across the ground at sunset, a selfie taken by a machine millions of miles from anyone who would see it. Mars stopped being just a planet. It became a place someone had been, even if that someone was made of metal and code. Opportunity lasted 14 years, longer than anyone expected. It climbed hills, explored craters, survived storms. Then, in 2018, a massive dust storm covered the entire planet. The sky went dark. Solar panels stopped charging. Engineers sent a wake-up command every day for months. No response. The last transmission from Opportunity was just a status report. Battery low, temperature dropping. Not a goodbye, just data. But people mourned it. They wrote poems, made art, called it a hero, because by then the rover wasn't just a machine. It was a presence, something that had gone where we couldn't go. And now it was gone. That grief was real, maybe irrational, but real. Mars had changed again. It wasn't a god. It wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't even just rock and dust. It had become a place we cared about. A place that mattered not because of what it gave us, but because we'd been there. Now there are people who want to live there. Not send robots, send humans, build cities. Elon Musk talks about terraforming Mars, thickening the atmosphere, warming the surface, making it livable. He calls it insurance. If something happens to Earth, nuclear war, asteroid, climate collapse, humanity needs a backup. Mars is the lifeboat. NASA plans missions for the 2030s. Astronauts training in deserts that look like Mars but aren't. Flags ready to plant. Footprints waiting to be made. The same dream we've always had, just closer now. Possible, maybe, if the money holds and the rockets work and nothing goes wrong. But something about it feels off. Mars isn't a blank slate. It's not empty the way we pretend. It already had its chance. Water, warmth, atmosphere. It already lived, or almost lived, and then it ended. Now we want to go there and try again. As if we could succeed where a planet failed. Maybe that's the point. Maybe Mars isn't about escape. It's about refusal. The refusal to accept that some places are meant to stay quiet, that some endings are final. Or maybe it's simpler. We see ourselves in Mars because Mars shows us what we're afraid of becoming. A world that used to be warm and is now cold. That used to have rivers and now has dust. That used to have a future and now only has a past. We look at Mars and see Earth in a few billion years, or a few hundred if we're careless. Atmosphere gone, oceans vanished, cities buried. The same slow erasure, just on a different clock. So we tell ourselves we'll save it, bring Mars back to life, plant trees, build domes, melt ice, make the air breathable, reverse what took millions of years to break, rewrite the ending. Maybe we will. Maybe humans will walk on Mars and stay, build homes, raise children, look up at Earth in the night sky, a blue dot, the way Mars looks to us now, and feel the same pull. The longing for a place that's too far to reach but too close to forget. But even if we do, Mars won't stop being what it is. A mirror, a memory, a place we project ourselves onto because we can't look directly at what we are. Lonely, fragile, desperate to matter, afraid of endings. Lowell's Martians were never real. The canals were never built. The dying civilization was never there. But the feeling was real. The fear of running out of time. The hope that someone, somewhere, figured out how to survive. The need to believe we're not alone, even if it means inventing company. Mars became humanized, not because we found life there. It happened because we couldn't stop putting ourselves there. In the lines Lowell drew, in the stories Bradbury wrote, in the rovers we sent to die alone in the dust, in the dreams of cities we haven't built yet. We looked at a dead planet and saw a second chance, a fresh start, a place to try again. Mars doesn't care. It never did. It's been spinning in the dark for 4.5 billion years. It lost its oceans. Its magnetic field collapsed. Its sky thinned and froze. And it kept going. Not because it wanted to, because it didn't have a choice. That's what we see when we look at Mars. Not possibility, inevitability. The knowledge that everything ends, even worlds, and all we can do is keep moving until we can't. The god of war became a planet. The planet became a dream. The dream became a mission. And the mission became another way of saying, we don't know how to sit still. We don't know how to let things be. We don't know how to look at the night sky and accept the dark. Mars will still be there, long after we're gone. Dust will blow. Storms will rage. Ice will sleep at the poles. It doesn't need us. It never did. It was fine before we noticed it, and it will be fine after we forget. Maybe that's why we can't stop looking. Deep down, we know. We know Mars doesn't need saving. We know the canals were never there. We know the cities are shadows we drew on our own fear. We know all of it, and we keep looking anyway. Because Mars isn't the answer. It's the question, the one we keep asking, even though the silence has already replied. Billions of years ago, Mars might have been alive. Water in the valleys, warmth in the air, the possibility of something beginning. Then it ended. Not with fire, with cold, with time, with the same patient erasure that waits for everything. We found it too late, or maybe exactly when we needed to, late enough to see what it used to be, early enough to imagine what it could become. We found it when Earth started feeling too small, when the future started looking like the past, when the question stopped being, is there life on Mars, and became, can we live there? The answer is still no, not yet, maybe not ever. Mars is hostile. Radiation, dust storms that cover the planet, temperatures that drop to 200 below zero, no breathable air, no liquid water, no magnetic field. It's not a home, it's a test, one we might fail, but humans have never been good at walking away. The plans continue. Rockets get built, simulations run, astronauts train, and maybe one day someone will stand on the surface, plant a flag, say something historic. We'll all feel like we've won, like we've beaten the silence. Mars won't feel different. The dust will keep blowing. The sky will stay pink. The cold will stay cold. And the question we thought we were answering will just get quieter. Because Mars was never about Mars. It was about the part of us that can't stop reaching. That looks at a dead planet and sees hope. That sees distance and calls it destiny. That mistakes loneliness for purpose. Maybe that's what makes us human. The inability to accept that some places aren't meant for us. That some endings are final. That some silences don't need to be filled. Or maybe we're just scared. Scared that if we stop reaching, we'll have to sit with what we already have. Scared that if we stop imagining other worlds, we'll have to fix this one. Scared that Mars was never the answer, because the question was never about Mars. The Babylonians looked up and saw death. Lowell looked up and saw a dying civilization. Bradbury looked up and saw a graveyard. Musk looks up and sees a city. All of them were right. All of them were wrong. Mars is a rock covered in iron oxide, cold, dead, indifferent, and we keep turning it into something else. Because that's what humans do. We take the universe and humanize it, give it names, stories, meanings it never asked for. We look at stars and see patterns. We look at planets and see homes. We look at silence and hear questions. Mars didn't ask to be a mirror. It didn't ask to carry our myths, our dreams, our fear of endings. It was just there, spinning, quiet, minding its own absence. We couldn't leave it alone. And maybe that says more about us than it ever will about Mars. The god of war became a world. The world became a mirror. And the mirror keeps reflecting the same thing. Not Mars. Us. Reaching for something just out of reach. Hoping it means something. Afraid it doesn't. Maybe Mars was never waiting for us. Maybe it was just waiting.